Hello, listener. Thanks for joining us on Beyond Distribution with GTDC podcast. This episode was recorded during our EMEA Vendor Summit last month and features two very well-known Lenovo executives in the channel. Ralf Jordan, who is the Vice President of Channels for EMEA, and Irene Acedo-Rico, EMEA Executive Director of Sales, Enterprise Business Group. Frank asks our guests about their thoughts on AI and data center expansion, the circular economy, and what they believe will be the key drivers to fuel hardware sales in EMEA, and most importantly, the role that the distributors continue to play in delivering value in the market. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to check out previous episodes on your platform of choice or by visiting our website at www.gtdc.org. Thanks for listening.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of Beyond Distribution, GTDC podcast. And I'm thrilled today to be coming from our EMEA Summit in Amsterdam. And I've got two folks with me that you're really going to enjoy listening to. First is Ralf Jordan, Vice President of Channels EMEA for Lenovo. And with Ralf is Irene Acedo-Rico. I hope I did that right, Irene.
Yes.
Close enough.
Yes.
Who is the Executive Director of Enterprise Sales for Lenovo. So welcome. So, as we get started, Ralf, you and I are old friends. We worked together at Dell for, a few years, and it's really great seeing you again. And obviously, you've moved on to a new, exciting role. Tell us a little bit about, your background in the channel, and also, your role today at Lenovo.
Okay, let's say starting maybe with the role.
Yeah.
Because I joined Lenovo just September last year.
Yep.
To basically run the channel for EMEA, and as well specifically to try to support the transformational journey that we are on. Yeah? Yep. Because at the end of the day, obviously coming from the number one in the PC, now as well focusing a lot on growing in the data center, growing in our service and solution space. And at the end of the day, it's a big transformational task that we are on. Mm-hmm. It's a very exciting time. And that was as well for me the reason to say, yes, it's a great opportunity. Maybe to my background, quite long industry veteran. Yeah.
Yeah.
Started 89 within IBM. Was then 2005 part of the acquisition of the PC business of IBM by Lenovo. Worked within Lenovo for 7-8 years up to 2011. And as you know, then had a short break, and I'm now finally back.
Yeah.
Back to the light.
Well, they're lucky to have you because obviously, having worked with you, I know certainly your level of commitment, but you know the channel and you know the role. And so I think it's a really good move for both you.
Now, and regardless of the jobs that I have had, basically from the start, I was always involved in different roles with go-to-market and channel. Yep. I as well as strongly believe into the channel model. Yeah, saw the benefits over the years, saw as well the challenges and opportunities from time to time. But I'm really a channel guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great. What about
and
you?
I am a channel girl as well. so I joined Lenovo already 8 years when Lenovo bought System X from IBM.
Yep.
So I am also an ex-IBMer and always has been selling on the hardware side in IBM times and now in Lenovo. And always very close to the channel, so always being responsible for either channel sales or enterprise and SMB sales, but really channel is on my heart, but it's also on the core of the Lenovo strategy, and this is what I love the most. And now working with Ralf, and as Ralf is commenting, we are in this middle of this transformation, which is transformation of the company, of our company, moving towards solutions and services led. And I think that interesting times and a lot of fresh ideas coming from Ralf that we are, really executing. So that's
great.
Really good.
So obviously there's a lot to talk about in terms of what you guys have been doing, where you're going, etc. But one of the things that strikes me, having spent a little bit of time here in Europe, certainly as part of GTDC, is Europe seems to be in the forefront of a lot of the ESG initiatives that are out there, whether it's sustainability, whether it's, more of the, more of the social, kinds of things. I mean, last year, for example, you participated in a panel that we had about, kind of women in IT, even more specifically women in distribution, and it was very clear from that panel that while intentions are all good, we need to do more, right? And I know you're involved, and I know certainly Lenovo is. Talk a little bit about that and your view and what you're doing.
So for us, diversity and inclusion is on the core of our strategy, and I really mean it. We can live it, all of us together in Lenovo. So we are very much on making sure that we like the word inclusion. So we don't only look into gender, but also age. And I think it's very important in our industry. And the more, we grow and we expand our business, we want to get young talent into the organization for sure, because they are coming with fresh ideas. The reality is that our customers are more on the age of the young than on our age, and therefore I think that bringing this mindset, this way of doing business, because in front of our customers we have people talking their language. For sure, women in tech is a big topic in Lenovo. We take it absolutely seriously, since we are collaborating with the schools, with universities. The truth is that whenever we are hiring new talent, young or senior, it's very difficult to get women on the pipeline. So in Lenovo, we have some policies like, for instance, when we are going to hire, we need to have always in the pipeline at least one woman, and many times it's difficult to find these. So I think that there is a lot of things to do still, and all of us are ambassadors of this culture, starting by YY, our CEO. So we really believe that diversity and inclusion makes us stronger, and absolutely representing the.
It's funny.
The world.
I didn't realize it, but all three of us at some point worked for IBM.
Yeah.
And the thing that I would tell you is, having worked for IBM, at a very early age, it kind of set the foundation for, how I thought about, the work environment and inclusion and those types of things. And you guys will remember this, with IBM, it was basically an edict, which was respect for the individual, right? And you thought like that, you operated like that. And I think it was a very positive foundation. And so when a lot of the discussion started about inclusion and diversity and things like that, my attitude at the time was, well, geez, that's always been the case, because it's always was like that in IBM. Now, obviously, there's pockets of where maybe it didn't work, but I always felt like that was the case. But what I have come to realize is, to the exact point that you made, if you don't make the effort, in other words, if you don't make that extra effort to ensure that, in the interview process, there are acceptable candidates, from all areas, you're not really doing what you should be doing. And so you kind of have to force the issue a little bit. And I think that's what you're describing here.
Yes, right? Yes. And when we are looking for young talent, there is amazing women that they are maybe graduates, but they come with a lot of, open-minded. Now we are, investing heavily on artificial intelligence, which is something very, how do I say it, sophisticated, but we are looking into graduates. And in some countries, we are really getting amazing girls, because this is very young talent, that are for sure, bringing a point of view that it's where we are learning. But the most important thing for us in Lenovo is that part of our culture is people first. So this is more than just diversity and inclusion. This is the respect for the individual that we all of us learn in IBM, but in Lenovo, all of us are really very much focused on, making sure that we invest on our people.
But I believe it's as well important that, let's say, if you are like a global operating company, you as well carry global responsibility. So, and let's say when you mentioned earlier that some of the ESG topics are maybe driven out of Europe. Some markets within Europe, I believe, started very fast, in the Nordics as an example. But at the end of the day, it's important for all of us, regardless of where we are sitting. So, and obviously, as a company taking that responsibility, we are as well heavily focused on our reduction of our emissions. let's say we managed to get last year, I believe, as one of the first companies by the Science-Based Target Initiative, our plan approved to be basically net zero by 2050. We spend in the company, and we see that as well within our markets, basically a lot of thinking and activities around how does circular economy really works. And obviously it starts with a vendor, but a vendor alone is not capable of addressing it. You need the entire value chain. You need to work together with your channel in a tier 2 world, with your distributor and your channel partners to ultimately address. Yeah. So, and when you look into the way how we are designing in the meantime our products, we are really thinking about basically design, use, and reuse. Yeah? So, and you see that in a lot of aspects. You see that on the component that we use, you see that on the packaging that we use, you see that on the transportation that we use. And then it's as well the work together with the channel in order to identify where are the opportunities. Because on the one hand side, it's a responsibility to help our planet, but at the same time, there's as well business opportunity inside. Yeah. There's on the one hand side really, you see and you know that we have some markets within Europe that are starting to basically force reused products in tenders. France is an example of that. So, and for that you need to have answers. And if you don't play, it's a missed opportunity. But at the same time, and you might know about the circle that the circle is a brand name that we have for bringing partners together to work on circular economy. We are realizing as well new revenue streams. We are seeing new opportunities by doing so. Yeah. So, and I think that's a responsibility that we carry.
Yeah, totally. And it's really interesting. So last year, at this event, one of the things that we do is we hold a leadership meeting for all the senior, distributor executives. And we do it, the day before the session. It's a 4-hour meeting and discuss a lot. One of the things we talk about is our initiatives and what should we be focused on, what kinds of things should we invest in, et cetera. And of course, Ralf has been part of our VAC for a long time, our Vendor Advisory Council, and from a vendor standpoint, he's provided input into that. And anyway, we walked out of that meeting last year and it was really clear that sustainability had to be a major focus, right? Sustainability is part of the ESG, overall ESG initiatives. And so we went out, we hired PwC, who's got a really good practice in this area, and we've started an initiative, and the beginning idea was just to develop the dialogue, right? To your point, to have the circular economy, if you will, to have the distributors first talk to each other, right? And talk to each other about what they're doing and it's important to them and why, et cetera. And then we expanded it obviously to the vendor community. And now certainly Lenovo is part of the group that is part of our work effort. And then we also brought in some of the regulatory inputs, right? Because the EU is certainly imposing lots of restrictions. So even if it wasn't the right thing to do from the planet and from the environment standpoint, it's something you're going to have to do anyway because the EU is going to dictate it, right? Yeah. And what we're realizing is this is a really important set of initiatives, and it is being driven out of Europe because I can tell you in North America, while there's discussion around it,
it's not as hot
no,
as here.
It's not nearly as advanced.
Here, there is no an RFP, that there is no a statement on sustainability. So you have to be there.
So every RFP has one?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Every single country in Europe.
Wow.
Every single country. And as Ralf is saying, we have to do this with our community of partners. So we have this Lenovo 360 circle where we are, working together on being part of the circular economy chain.
Yeah.
Together, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, because
for instance, and in Lenovo, we take this absolutely seriously. We open our factory in Budapest, Ulo, for servers and for PCs, and it's really built up with this concept. So all the electricity comes from the sun. So really, taking it as a role model, by example. So it's
No, that's great.
It's
clear that it's not just lip service.
Yes.
It's legit. That's good.
And we are discovering new services, so that's very good as well.
Yeah,
so,
totally. Yes. Yeah, good. Well, now let's transition a little bit. So certainly, the IT community in EMEA has worked through. I mean, globally, obviously, the IT marketplace has seen a number of challenges, right? Macroeconomic things, inflation, wars. I mean, there's been a lot of things that have happened over the last, 18 months or so. Very challenging. But we're working through a variety of challenges. But so talk to me a little bit about, Ralf, your kind of view on kind of where we are today, what kinds of challenges you're still seeing, and what are the opportunities, right? In other words, what are you excited about as we move forward from an opportunity standpoint?
Let's say when you take a look to Lenovo, we are obviously operating the PC market.
Yep.
And we are as well more and more focusing on growing our data center software and solutions business.
Yep.
Let's say the PC market right now as we speak is still in a tough environment.
Yep.
Consumer market is down year over year, commercial market is down year over year. But at the same time, I'm confident that even in the PC market, we are going to see growth rates toward the end of the year.
Yeah.
What is driving that is when you look into, for example, activation rates that are out there, Microsoft and others. I believe the activation rate by far is not as low than what the shipment numbers would indicate. Mm-hmm. And ultimately what you see right now in the market in EMEA is still that we are basically reducing inventories that has been built during the pandemic due to supply chain challenges, times of shipment, demand dropped, war came, and all of that. And when you look as well into year-over-year compares, obviously we are getting into easier year-over-year compares toward the end of the year. Yeah. So therefore, I do believe that there we are going to see recovery. On the other hand, and we are now talking about digitalization for years, the entire industry. But at the end of the day, it's driving projects. Mm-hmm. It's basically what companies need to do in order to stay competitive. Yep. So, and that is as well then in return driving a lot of data center projects that we are benefiting from. Yeah? When you look into our global results last year, the share of our infrastructure business and services business as part of the total basically went up by 7 points. Now sitting at around 40%. Yeah. Wow. Obviously, you can argue that's partly driven as well by the softness in the PC market. Yeah? But at the same time, I believe globally we have seen growth rates in the data center environment of close to 40%, 37%, and in the services environment close to 22%. Therefore, there's a lot of movement. Yeah? Yeah. On the other hand, there's not one, I believe, IT paper that you right now are able to open where you don't see AI. Yeah? So, and obviously it's a hype word right now, but the possibilities that AI is able to give our industry is massive. Yeah? I believe a lot of jobs will change. And I read recently, I don't know from whom, somebody who said, look, you don't need to be afraid that AI is taking your job, but you need to be afraid that somebody who is leveraging AI is taking your job. Yeah. And I think that's a quite good statement. And I believe it as well drives a lot of very positive discussions that are happening right now.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I was going to say that on the infrastructure solutions on the data center, we have had very good last 2 years, really, really good, growing double digit. And we have a very clear strategy, which is we are on attack mode, if I may say. Mm-hmm. So what we call premium to market. Yep. So we are number 3 on the marketplace, and we want to repeat what we have done on the PC side. PC is now number 1. And our ambition is to become number 1 on the marketplace. It's going to take time because we are number 3, sure. But steadily we are, this is our strategy to acquire new customers, new solutions, new, for sure, go to markets in order to expand our business. So far so good. And this year, even though the market, for sure, with everything that is happening in Europe and the inflation, it's really tough, but we are going to close first quarter fiscal year for us again a double digit, so which is really our strategy. So very much customer centric. Yep. very much solutions and software focus. HPC, so high performance computing, is our brand when we are really number one at worldwide level. In Europe, growing very, very good, but also very important software defined infrastructure. So everything around solutions is what we are putting the focus. Edge is going to be a new technology, and the beauty is that we are doing this with the channel.
Yeah.
Because for Lenovo, we are a channel global company.
Yep.
So we are doing this because we have the channel working with us.
Yep. Yeah. In fact, I'm going to talk about that in a second. But before I do, one of the things that I find interesting as I'm talking to you about this, I'm thinking about sort of when you look at the macro environment, what traditionally has happened when you've tried to look at growth in the IT space, it tends to follow GDP pretty closely, right?
With a premium to GDP.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Totally. And generally 1.5 to 2 points above GDP, right? And if you look at the last 20 years, with maybe one or two exceptions, it holds.
Yes.
So this year, at the beginning of the year, the idea was, GDP's 2.5 or so. The IT industry is probably going to grow, 4.5 to 5, right? But within that, there was a huge gap between, what I would call endpoint solutions and enterprise, kind of products. And so the good news is you guys are playing in both those spaces, right? Because there was a time when you weren't, but you are, and therefore you can offset some of what you see as, the lack of growth, or in some cases even negative growth in certain areas, with double-digit growth in others, which balances the business and enables you to kind of look at it, in a different way and move forward, which I think is really positive.
True.
And what we're seeing, by the way, it's kind of holding out. The first quarter numbers overall were low single digits overall growth, and we saw bad numbers in the endpoint solutions, but really good numbers in the other areas.
Yeah.
And to your point, Ralf, and I'd be interested in your thoughts going forward. You guys are fairly optimistic in the second half, and I know there's a number of factors driving it, but is it things like, the Microsoft refresh, sort of cycle, public sector spending? Here in Europe, obviously, there's a lot of capital being infused in the digital investment. Is it the things like that are driving your optimism for the future here?
At the end of the day, I believe it's a combination of nearly everything that you mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's say we as well, when you look into, let's say, some movements in the industry, if you look into component cost, how that is doing, I believe we are all of that seems to, for me, is an indication that we have seen more or less the rock bottom, and that we are really growing up. Yeah, let's say Windows refresh for sure will help to drive that. Yeah, we as well entering a kind of replenishment cycle of the COVID investments to a certain extent.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and again, maybe not every device,
Right.
but am I convinced that we are going to still have a bigger PC market than pre-COVID? The answer is yes, completely. Yeah. So, and I think at the end that is what is driving that. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And in the enterprise space, for sure, public sector is going to be very relevant this year. It has started being very relevant this year. Yep. But I think that industrial also, there is plenty of investment coming to Europe. Yep. There is plenty of need to optimize whatever is their business models, and artificial intelligence is really helping. All the edge computing solutions are something that it's really, a demand of the customers, and still cloud, so moving from private to public or back to private is really very important. So I think that these are tendencies that are there, still very strong. It's true that when you look into IDC or when you look into context for distribution sales, I think that they are a little bit pessimistic what they are projecting for this year, because we really see the demand. It's true that market is a little bit more tougher, so I cannot deny that. But we are seeing a super strong pipeline. So that's why I'm very optimistic that this year is going to be another year of success.
And I think they would. I think context. Obviously, context here in Europe, we spend a lot. We're one of our partners, and we spend a lot of time. I spent 3 hours with them yesterday afternoon, and they do a really good job of kind of laying out from a forecasting standpoint what they think is going to happen. And then, to their credit, they go back and say, hey, we thought it was going to do this, and it didn't, and
Thanks
here's
God.
why.
Yeah.
And I give them a lot of credit for doing that.
Absolutely, yes.
And they are getting more optimistic. And I think that they do recognize the opportunities for sure in the endpoint solution space, but also the fact that the enterprise piece is going to continue to be, positive, and you guys are now playing in that in a big way, right? And so I think that's good. You mentioned channel, and you mentioned, that Lenovo is a channel first, kind of a company, and I certainly know that, because I know the heritage, going back to the days from when I was involved at IBM and the transition in, and I also know that you have longstanding relationships with distribution.
Sure.
And of course, that I'm partial to that, and that's positive. But talk to me a little bit about that, because Ralph, you for sure know as much about distribution and going to market through distribution as anybody, because I worked with you for 3 years at Dell, and I know that you know this space really well. What are your thoughts on distribution today, the progress that they've made, the evolution that they've made over time, and what are the things that we need to continue to do to ensure that they help you from a go-to-market standpoint?
I believe distribution has massively evolved over the last couple of years. Obviously, has been as well forced to do that to a certain extent, to stay relevant in our industry.
Totally.
So, and what I see is as well that the discussions are changing. It's less about a vendor trying to sell something to a distributor. It's much more now talking about how can we process optimize, how do we basically go after new revenue streams, how do we go after certain sets of the channel. It's a more sophisticated work, it's a much more data-driven world, it's a much more process-driven world that we are now talking about, where as well everybody of us who is involved needs to be able to adapt and learn and change. So, and I think that is what I see as well happening within at least the EMEA distribution landscape, that the willingness to adapt, to change, to jointly learn, maybe as well to experiment jointly together, is clearly a given.
And for us, absolutely, it's on the core of our strategy, because we need to expand our business by expanding enablement. And for this, we are using the distributors is a key cornerstone of our strategy. So, for instance, TrueScale. TrueScale is our as-a-service offering for PC and for data center. So we signed the first contract in the channel, has been signed here in Europe with Arrow. We are leveraging ArrowSphere to sell our, as-a-service. So all these things, and we are reaching, new partners, partners meaning resellers, but MSPs, but CSPs, different OISBs. So really, we see distributors, the place that we gain all together in front of customers. So really, really very important. And as I said, to very sophisticated solutions or offerings like our TrueScale. We have now Arrow, we have Arrow for sure, it was the first, but we have also Tech Data, we have Computer Gross, and really, and also, and we are really, because for us, all that we do is always channel driven, channel thinking. And now for sure our as-a-service offering had to be channel, and that's a reality. So that's distribution for us.
One of the things, and Ralph, and kind of in closing, you mentioned that distribution has evolved massively, right? That's the term you use, and I say that all the time. I talk about it. I do it in the context of 30 years, and but one of the things that I've clearly observed is prior to the pandemic, there was a lot of discussion about distribution is being disintermediated. What is the value of distribution going forward? As we get into the SaaS world and cloud, and then pandemic hit, and all of a sudden people realized, I guess there is value in distribution, because out of all of the supply chains in all of the different industries, this one continued to work. And my premise is it continued to work because the distributors had excellent relationships with the vendors and were able to utilize 40 years of working together to keep product flowing, right? And for the most part, it continued until we ended up with some chip shortages and things like that caused some issues. You agree with that? Or
let's say absolutely, but I wouldn't nail it down just to the supply chain element.
Yep.
Because of what we have seen, as I believe in the pandemic time, is as well the intimacy that distributors have built up over years.
Yep.
And let's say when you are struggling, when you have problems, you think about, okay, look, where do you go?
Right.
And I believe in a lot of places we have seen that specifically partners went to their distributors. They basically, the ones that have been able to grow them over the last 20 years, where there was trust in the system, and I believe as well distribution have played during that time a very, very important role as well in the intimacy to their end users, to the channel.
Yep, totally. And you mentioned an important word, trust.
Absolutely.
And that's built up over a lot of years.
Yeah.
Right?
I like to say that we passed pandemic together.
Yeah.
Really supporting
Totally.
each other, and absolutely.
Yeah.
And as Ralf was saying, they were really super relevant for us to to succeed with an amazing PC results that we have had.
I couldn't agree more. Well, look, this was great. I really appreciate you guys taking time out of your schedule, first of all, to come to our event. Secondly, to talk to us and to our audience, because I think what you're doing is really important. And I think, the industry in general, but certainly the industry and the folks in EMEA are very interested in what's happening and what you're doing. So thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
As well, thanks for the invite, Frank. And I believe it's as well important, let's say, an organization like yours, I believe has as well the ability to really help us to tackle the big problems. Because if we take all of what we started to talk about, ESG initiatives, at the end of the day, we need collectively to address that. And I believe a body like yours is able or is enabling us to do that.
Yeah, well, good. Well, we're working hard at it, that's for sure. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks, Frank.